Hey guys, before we jump into the video, if you haven't watched part 1 yet, I've got you covered. The link is in the description. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.
Chapter 6. Gringotts' Vault. Yes, I've brought it, Hagrid said, rummaging in his pocket as he spoke. First, he pulled out 2 dormice and placed them on the counter, then a puffskein. Finally, after searching for a while, he exhaled in relief. Found it. Hagrid held up a tiny golden key. The goblin took the key, examined it carefully, and then handed it back to Hagrid. Seems to be in order. I also have a letter from Professor Dumbledore himself, Hagrid said nonchalantly, pulling a crumpled letter from his pocket. It's about the item in Vault 713. Harry realized Hagrid was talking about something secret, but Hagrid's voice was so loud that he couldn't help overhearing the words, Vault 713's item. What was this loudly plotting secrets? Harry found it both funny and exasperating. The goblin accepted the letter, carefully inspecting the magical seals before reading it thoroughly. Afterward, he nodded and said, Very well. I'll have someone escort you. Griphook. At the goblin's call, another goblin, short and dressed formally, approached them. All right, let's go, Hagrid said, patting Harry on the shoulder to signal him to follow. We'll get your money first, then take care of business. Hey, you're animals, the goblin at the counter reminded loudly. Hagrid suddenly remembered the small creatures still on the desk. He went back to retrieve the dormice and puffskein, which were still bewildered, and stuffed them back into his large pocket before striding off after Griphook. Harry and Hagrid followed Griphook to a cart, which sped swiftly along the tracks toward the vaults. The cart moved so fast that the cold air roared past them, making Harry's eyes sting. Noticing that neither Hagrid nor Griphook was paying attention to him, Harry conjured a small magical shield in front of his face to block the wind. Hagrid, do you really think my family left me money? Harry asked, still worried. Don't worry, Harry, Hagrid reassured him with a chuckle. You're worried about money? Ha! If James knew, he'd. Before he could finish, the cart screeched to a halt. We've arrived, Griphook said in a businesslike tone. Hagrid stepped forward and unlocked the vault with the key. Wow! Harry was dazzled by the piles of gold coins inside. Who would have thought he had such a small fortune buried deep beneath London? For some reason, the sight made him think of the golden-haired girl he'd met on the train in his first year. The girl, proud and arrogant, always flaunted her father's wealth and mocked his poverty, often attempting to recruit him as her lackey, especially that summer after his second year. Oh, what are you doing here? Buying second-hand robes. Outside Twilfit and Tattings, Cassandra Malfoy stood haughtily, looking down her nose at a bashful Harry. Harry didn't mind her ridicule, though. Compared to the Dursleys, her comments were quite mild. Yeah. Harry smiled at the blonde girl. Are there any here you've worn before? At his words, her gray eyes filled with disdain. She turned and left the shop without a word. That afternoon, he received 2 used Slytherin robes. Harry? Harry? Hagrid's voice snapped him back to reality. Hagrid grinned and said, See? I wasn't lying. Your family left you quite a bit of money. Yeah. Harry, still marveling at the wealth, thought to himself that he might even be richer than the Malfoys now. These gold coins are called galleons, the silver ones are sickles, and the bronze ones are nuts, Hagrid explained patiently. 17 sickles make a galleon, and 29 nuts make a sickle. Easy enough, right? As he spoke, Hagrid helped Harry stuff coins into his pockets. Easy enough? No matter how many times he heard it, Harry couldn't help but complain internally about the wizarding currency system. When would the wizarding world learn from Muggles and reform their currency system? Even a tradition-bound place like Britain had ditched its old system in 1971. All right, this should last you 2 terms. The rest will stay safe here, Hagrid said, packing Harry's pockets with coins before turning to Griphook. Now take us to Vault 713, but can you slow the cart down a bit? There's only 1 speed, Griphook replied curtly. Hagrid shrugged at Harry helplessly. Harry didn't mind, though, as he had his mini-magical shield. The door to Vault 713 had no keyhole, something Harry noticed immediately. "Step back," Griphook said solemnly, extending a long finger to tap the door lightly. The door melted away piece by piece. "Only Gringotts goblins should do this," Griphook warned. "Unless you want to be sucked into the door and never come out." The vault was bound to hold something incredibly valuable. Harry thought as he watched Griphook and Hagrid enter. Moments later, they emerged. Instantly, Harry felt a strong surge of ancient magical energy emanating from the item Hagrid was carrying. He regretted not going in to see it for himself. He could feel that the item had something to do with ancient magic, which couldn't be used before the age of 15, only sensed. His intuition told him that the item could bypass the age restriction. "What is that?" Harry asked, trying to sound like an inquisitive 11-year-old. "Oh no, Harry, I can't tell you that," Hagrid said hastily. "It's a task Professor Dumbledore gave me to deliver it to Hogwarts. Well, he strictly forbade me from talking about it." "Sorry, lad." "That's all right," Harry said, nodding in understanding. If it was a secret, he couldn't press Hagrid for details. Besides, Hagrid had already become a friend in his heart, a towering and kind presence. And Hagrid's earlier unfinished sentence had given him a clue. Since it was going to Hogwarts, he'd have plenty of chances to study it after term started. Chapter 7. I think he looks like Lily. After leaving Gringotts, Hagrid suggested taking Harry to purchase the items listed in his acceptance letter. As they passed a sweet shop, Hagrid bought 2 ice creams and handed Harry one topped with raspberry and chocolate sauce. Eating as they walked, they made their way to Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Madame Malkin was a plump, kind-looking witch with a warm smile. When she saw Harry, she cheerfully welcomed him into the shop. Harry quickly finished his ice cream and followed Madame Malkin into the store. "Dear, you're here for your Hogwarts robes, aren't you? We have many styles, and we can customize them to your needs," she explained enthusiastically. "Oh, there's already a young witch inside trying on robes. I think you two will get along well." Following her gesture, Harry spotted a bushy-haired girl standing on a stool while a witch pinned up her robes. Madame Malkin guided Harry to stand beside the girl, and as he approached, the girl turned to face him. "Oh, are you a new student at Hogwarts too?" she asked, tilting her head with an air of pride. A different sort of pride from Cassandra's. Cassandra's came from her aristocratic lineage, but this girl's demeanor reminded Harry of a top student from his Muggle school. It was the pride of an academic overachiever. Yet, her prominent front teeth amusingly reminded Harry of the dormice Hagrid had in his pocket. "Yes," Harry responded with a faint smile. Hermione also took note of Harry's attire, not its worn appearance but the unmistakable Muggle style. "Are you from a Muggle family too?" Hermione's tone became more friendly. "Sort of," Harry replied. Hermione nodded knowingly. "Hermione Granger," she said, extending her hand. "Pleased to meet you. Harry Potter." Harry extended his hand and shook hers. At his introduction, Hermione's expression shifted to astonishment. "My goodness, is it really you?" she exclaimed. "I know all about you, of course. I bought a few extra reference books for light reading modern magical history, the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. They all mention you prominently." Light reading? Harry thought Hermione might not be the kind of person he'd naturally get along with. She seemed like the archetypal Ravenclaw. A famous person like you shouldn't be living in the Muggle world. "Why did you tell me you're from a Muggle family?" Hermione asked, frowning. "You see, my parents were killed by Voldemort when I was very young," Harry explained quietly. "I was raised by my aunt and only recently learned about magic." "Oh, I'm so sorry," Hermione said, biting her lip. "I truly didn't know." "It's fine," Harry said with a smile. "After all, you couldn't have known." "Miss Granger," a stern voice interrupted. Harry turned to see a witch in a green robe and glasses. "Professor McGonagall," Hermione exclaimed, clearly delighted to see her. McGonagall smiled warmly at Hermione before turning her attention to Harry, her gaze meeting his emerald green eyes. "And this must be Mr. Potter?" she said. Good day, Professor, Harry replied with a polite bow. McGonagall inclined her head slightly, a wistful expression briefly crossing her face. He reminds me of Lily, McGonagall thought, feeling pleased. At that moment, Madame Malkin approached. If you don't mind, ladies, and this young gentleman, Madame Malkin said, addressing Harry. I need to start taking measurements. I'll see you later, Harry, Hermione said as she stepped down. See you at school. See you, Harry nodded. Goodbye, Professor. After being measured, Harry and Hagrid continued exploring Diagon Alley, purchasing everything on Harry's school supply list. Finally, they arrived at Ollivander's, the wand shop. Ollivander's, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. Harry read aloud from the peeling gold lettering on the sign. Quite ancient, isn't it? Hagrid said, patting Harry on the shoulder. I bought my wand here when I started at Hogwarts, just like nearly every student from the school. Harry nodded in agreement. He himself had bought a wand here a century ago when the shop was run by Givens Ollivander, a slightly eccentric wizard. Holly and Phoenix Feather 11 inches. But where was that old wand now? Harry felt a need to track down his former companion. The shop was small, containing only a single long bench. Hagrid informed Harry he needed to step out briefly, leaving him alone in the shop. He didn't have to wait long before a soft voice greeted him. Good afternoon. Hello, Harry replied, turning to face an elderly man. If Harry guessed correctly, this man must be Givens Ollivander's son. Yes, yes indeed, the man said, nodding fervently. I've been expecting you, Harry Potter. Your eyes are just like your mother's. I remember when she came here to buy her first wand. It seems like only yesterday. 10¼ inches, made of willow, swishy, and perfect for charms work. Your father's wand was quite different, Ollivander continued. Mahogany 11 inches, pliable, excellent for transfiguration. He was very fond of it. Though, of course, it's the wand that chooses the wizard. Ollivander leaned in closer, studying Harry intently. And that scar of yours. He reached out to brush aside Harry's fringe, revealing the lightning-shaped scar. I'm sorry to say it was caused by a wand I sold. 13½ inches, with a phoenix feather core. A powerful wand, terribly powerful, that fell into the wrong hands. Harry subtly stepped back, putting some space between himself and the overly inquisitive Ollivander. I forgive you, Harry said. Chapter 8. Magic Wand and Birthday Present. Mr. Ollivander opened his mouth slightly, clearly not expecting Harry to say something like that. To avoid an awkward silence, Mr. Ollivander decided to change the topic. Thank you, Mr. Potter, he said, turning back to the counter. He pulled out a measuring tape and then asked, Which arm do you usually use for your wand? My right hand, sir, Harry replied, maintaining a polite smile. Raise your arm, oh good. Mr. Ollivander began taking Harry's measurements from his shoulder to fingertips, then wrist to elbow, and even from his shoulder to the floor. Harry couldn't figure out why buying a wand required such precise measurements. It wasn't as though he was buying clothes. Did they really need to measure his waist, too? As he measured, Mr. Ollivander explained, though to Harry, it sounded more like a lecture about dragon heartstrings, phoenix feathers, and unicorn hair. He didn't explain why he needed to take so many measurements. After what felt like ages, the measuring process finally ended, and Harry let out a small sigh of relief. All right, Mr. Ollivander said, letting the tape measure drop to the floor where it coiled itself up. Now then, Mr. Potter, try this one. Maple wood, phoenix feather core, 7 inches, quite springy. Give it a go. Harry took the wand and barely gave it a wave before Mr. Ollivander snatched it back. No, not this one. Try this. Ebony wood, unicorn hair core, 8½ inches, very strong flexibility, he said, handing Harry another wand. Harry obediently took the wand, but before he could even wave it, Mr. Ollivander grabbed it from him. No, no, try this one instead. Mr. Ollivander muttered to himself. Aspen wood, dragon heartstring core, 11¾ inches. This time Harry didn't reach for the wand. Mr. Potter? Please, give it a try. Mr. Ollivander prompted, thinking Harry had zoned out. Are you sure this one is right for me? Harry asked. I feel like you'll just decide it doesn't suit me before I even try. It does seem like you and this one don't quite match, Mr. Ollivander murmured, ignoring Harry's sarcastic tone. He dove back into his shelves, rummaging for a long while. Aha! He finally exclaimed. Pulling out a box from the very bottom, he opened it carefully, almost reverently. Beechwood, dragon heartstring core, 11 inches. Harry didn't take it right away. Instead, he looked at Mr. Ollivander. Go on, try it, Mr. Ollivander said cheerfully, holding the wand out to him. Harry finally took the wand. The moment it touched his hand, he felt a warm surge flow through him. The wand's tip emitted a glowing light that burst into sparks, scattering like fireworks and even splashing onto the walls around them. Yes, that's it, Mr. Ollivander exclaimed, covering his mouth in delight. Beechwood. I knew it would be beechwood. You see, a true match for a beechwood wand signifies a unique individual. If they are young, they possess wisdom beyond their years. If they are an adult, they are insightful and experienced. Harry's lips twitched downward into a faint frown as he muttered, Not bad. He quickly pulled out some galleons and, after confirming the price with Mr. Ollivander, laid out 7 galleons on the counter to purchase the wand. Mr. Ollivander bowed deeply as he escorted Harry out of the shop. Outside the shop, Hagrid stood waiting with a large cake in his hands. Seeing Harry emerge, Hagrid walked up and handed the cake to him. I know your birthday's coming up, but we'll be parting ways soon. You're heading back to the Dursleys, so consider this an early celebration. Harry looked down at the cake. On it, the words Happy Birthday Harry were spelled out. 2 of the 3 words were misspelled, but his name, at least, was correct. Thanks, Hagrid, Harry said, giving him a wide smile. I love it. If you don't mind, how about we share it back at the Leaky Cauldron before we part ways? Harry, Hagrid said, ruffling Harry's already messy hair with his large hand. Back at the Leaky Cauldron, they enjoyed the cake. Along with all the books and supplies Harry had purchased, Hagrid also gifted him a snowy owl for his birthday. Harry decided to name her Hedwig. Thankfully, keeping snowy owls as pets was legal in England, so there was no need to worry about the authorities. However, the stares they received along the way were unavoidable. I regret it now, Hagrid sighed. I should have called the night bus. The night bus? Harry asked, pretending not to know. He had nearly forgotten about the night bus, which he had taken a few times during his school years. The night bus helps stranded witches and wizards. It can take you anywhere on land, Hagrid explained. Just take out your wand and stick it up in the air. Following Hagrid's instructions, Harry raised his wand into the air. Bang! A double-decker bus appeared almost instantly. At the same time, Harry noticed that the passers-by, who had been gawking at their unusual group, suddenly stopped paying attention. Confundus charm, Harry thought. It was likely embedded in the magic of the night bus. Hey, you two, are you getting on or not? The conductor called from the bus door. Hagrid quickly grabbed their bags and led Harry aboard. To Little Whinging, number 4, Privet Drive, Hagrid told the conductor. As Hagrid dealt with the conductor, Harry couldn't help but smile to himself. The thought of Dudley, who got carsick easily, experiencing a ride on the night bus was amusing. The look on his pudgy face would have been priceless. Chapter 9, Pigs with Wigs. Considering that the Dursley residence wasn't very far, Harry and Hagrid opted for the 9-sickle meal on the night bus without bothering to order hot cocoa or grab a towel and toothbrush. The night bus was incredibly fast, far outpacing any Muggle transportation. Obstacles in its path magically shifted aside, making the journey both safe and full of magical charm. In less than 20 minutes, Harry arrived at the Dursleys' doorstep. I won't be going in with you, Hagrid said. I've got to report back to Dumbledore. All right, Hagrid, Harry said, resting his hand on the cage containing Hedwig. Safe travels. See you at Hogwarts. See you at Hogwarts, Hagrid replied, waving cheerfully before the night bus disappeared from view with a blink. The sky was still bright, as London's higher latitude meant that in July, nightfall didn't fully settle until about 7:30 p.m. The Dursleys hadn't gone to bed yet, given the dramatic events of the day. Ever since Harry left, Petunia and Vernon had been locked in discussion about what to do. Even Dudley's antics, pacing in his smelting school uniform in a bid for attention, went unnoticed. Bored, Dudley sat by the door, and when he spotted Harry suddenly appearing, his pudgy face twisted into a mischievous grin. Whenever Dudley was in a bad mood, he'd vent his frustrations on Harry, bullying him mercilessly. Now that his favorite punching bag was back, Dudley felt it was the perfect time for some reunion fun. He seemed to have entirely forgotten about the earlier events of the day. "Hey, Dudley," Harry greeted him, undeterred by Dudley's approach. "Help me carry these bags inside, will you?" "Oh, really?" Dudley sneered, cracking his knuckles. "What if I say no?" "You will," Harry said confidently, pointing at Dudley's backside. "Unless you want that little pigtail gone. By the way, didn't someone once say you looked like a pig wearing a wig?" As Harry spoke, he remembered that the nickname was something he'd coined back in his early years. It had always seemed fitting. Startled, Dudley reached behind and realized with horror that a pigtail had indeed sprouted on his rear. "Harry Potter!" Dudley's face turned purple, mirroring his father Vernon's usual look of rage. Humiliated, Dudley lunged at Harry with arms outstretched. Harry quickly pulled out his wand and cast a small jinx. "What did you do to me?" Dudley shrieked as his body began dancing uncontrollably. "Tarantaligra, a little dancing spell," Harry explained, watching Dudley flail helplessly. Resting an arm on Hedwig's cage, he chuckled. "Hedwig, if you've never seen a pig dance, now's your chance." "Woo-woo," Hedwig hooted in response. "Stop it. Make it stop," Dudley wailed in panic. "Mom, Dad, help." His cries brought results. The Dursleys, abandoning their discussion, rushed out of the house. "Duddykins," Aunt Petunia cried, trying to grab hold of Dudley. Her thin frame, however, was no match for her son's involuntary movements. Uncle Vernon charged at Harry, his face flushed with fury. "What did you do to my son?" "Helping him lose weight," Harry said casually, shrugging. Vernon's beady eyes narrowed, his hand raised as if to strike, but he hesitated, glancing nervously around before his expression softened slightly, as if relieved. Was he checking to see if Hagrid was nearby? Harry wondered, but he'd guessed wrong. Vernon finally said, "Stop your nonsense this instant. Get inside." "What about my luggage?" Harry pointed at the pile beside him. "I'll carry it in." Vernon barked angrily. "Thank you, Uncle Vernon." Harry gave a mock bow and flicked his fingers toward Dudley, stopping the spell. The pigtail vanished as well. Vernon, looking as if he'd just swallowed a live insect, grabbed the heaviest of Harry's bags and hurried inside without a backward glance. "Dudley," Harry called as Dudley tried to follow, "carry this one for me." Though the bag was small, Harry found immense satisfaction in ordering Dudley around. Sniffling, Dudley reluctantly grabbed the bag and shuffled inside. Once inside, Harry instinctively moved toward the cupboard under the stairs, but Vernon stopped him. "Your room's upstairs now," Vernon said gruffly. "Your aunt and I decided you're too old for the cupboard. You'll have Dudley's second bedroom." "Why?" Harry asked, raising an eyebrow. "Don't ask why," Vernon roared. Harry knew the room well. Despite being called Dudley's second bedroom, it was mostly a storage space for things Dudley no longer wanted. For years, Harry had dreamed of moving into it. Dudley, however, reacted as if the world had ended. "No, that's my room. He can't have it. Mom, Dad, make him leave," he bawled. "Do you want to keep dancing, Duddy?" Petunia hissed, unusually stern. For the first time, Harry heard her use such a harsh tone with her precious son. "Listen, boy," Vernon growled, grabbing Harry's collar. "I don't care what tricks you've learned, and I'm not asking you to be grateful for all we've done raising you. Just don't let the neighbors find out we've got a freak in the family." Understand. Harry understood. What Vernon feared most was the neighbors discovering their freak secret. 1,000 pounds, Harry said, unfazed by being grabbed. After all, underage wizards weren't allowed to use magic outside school. Vernon took a deep breath. 500. Deal. Harry extended his hand. Releasing Harry's collar, Vernon reluctantly shook hands to seal the deal. Inspired, Dudley chimed in, "If I'm giving up my room, I want 1,000 pounds too." Exhausted, Vernon countered, 500. Dudley looked at Harry, who suggested, "Ask for half again." 750, Dudley said confidently. "Deal." Vernon agreed hastily. Harry sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Chapter 10. He still has to thank me. Uncle Vernon was very trustworthy. Or perhaps he was just afraid that breaking his promise might lead the neighbors to discover that they had a freak living in their house. So the 500 pounds were delivered to Harry's room that very night. "Boy, you'd better keep your word," Uncle Vernon said, his face full of displeasure. "Rest assured," Harry replied with a sincere smile. Keeping promises. For 500 pounds, Harry was willing to play along. Lying in bed, Harry felt a sense of unreality. Just yesterday, he had been at Hogwarts, chatting with Sebastian about his sister's illness. He remembered that Veritia had said they'd found some leads. Harry wondered how Anne's condition was now. He thought to himself that he should find an opportunity to visit the Sallow family. Wizards were long-lived, and it had only been over 100 years. If nothing unexpected happened, the Sallow siblings should still be alive. Harry trusted Sebastian, one of his best friends. After all, he was the man who trusted him enough to teach him the 3 unforgivable curses. But for now, Harry thought it best to keep a low profile before the school term started. As Harry was deep in thought, the door suddenly opened. Without looking up, he could tell it was Dudley who had entered. Knowing it was Dudley, Harry didn't bother to open his eyes. He continued resting, curious to see what Dudley wanted. Unexpectedly, Dudley just sat on the floor beside him with a thud. After a while, Harry heard the sound of muffled sobbing. Picking up his wand, Harry lit the tip, illuminating Dudley's rather large, tear-streaked face. "What's wrong?" Harry's heart softened, and he asked gently. The response was louder sobbing, though Dudley tried to suppress the sound. Harry knew all too well that if Dudley cried openly, it would be as deafening as a mandrake. "Stop crying. If Uncle Vernon comes over, he'll accuse me of using magic to bully you again," Harry said helplessly. But this is my room," Dudley said through his tears. "Didn't Uncle Vernon buy it for 250 pounds? Harry countered. Hearing this, Dudley choked up, unable to respond. Shaking his head, Harry suddenly had an idea. He pulled out a box of chocolate frogs from the cabinet and handed it to Dudley. "Here, it's a magical snack. I bet you've never had one." "What's this?" Dudley's interest was piqued at the mention of food. His tears stopped, and he forgot all about the room. Chocolate frogs. Inside, there are collectible cards that are popular among young wizards, Harry explained. The cards feature famous wizards. Wizards! Dudley opened the box and saw what looked like a real frog, leaving him stunned. This isn't a real frog, is it?" "Of course not. It's made of chocolate and enchanted," Harry replied with a smile, not mentioning that the chocolate frog could jump. To Harry's surprise, as soon as the chocolate frog jumped, Dudley caught it with lightning speed and stuffed it into his mouth. When it came to food, Dudley always displayed extraordinary agility. Delicious," Dudley said with a big grin, savoring the treat while pulling out the card inside. It featured an elderly man with a kind smile. "The back has information," Harry prompted. The name on the card was Paracelsus. Following Harry's suggestion, Dudley turned the card over and read the description aloud. Paracelsus, 1493 to 1541. A wizard of the same era as Copernicus and Leonardo da Vinci, was a medical genius. His bold theories challenged medieval thinking and led to the discovery of Parseltongue. Wow! After reading, Dudley flipped the card back over. "He's gone," Dudley exclaimed. You can't expect him to stay there all the time. He'll come back later, Harry explained. Would you like some other magical snacks? I have plenty more. Of course. Dudley nodded enthusiastically, his chubby cheeks jiggling. As for the moving card, Dudley didn't dwell on it. In fact, he didn't care. He was more interested in eating a few more chocolate frogs. Here's the deal. I'll give you snacks, but you have to help me with something. Harry picked up a stack of chocolate frogs, and Dudley's gaze remained glued to them. Just tell me what to do, Dudley said, still fixated on the chocolate frogs. Then, he belatedly took out £250 from his pocket and placed it on Harry's desk. After some thought, he withdrew 4 50-pound notes. Here, this should be enough to buy your snacks. You'll probably need some pocket money for school, right? This is all yours. Even £50 was a substantial amount. Harry knew that Gringotts exchanged pounds for galleons at a 5-to-1 ratio. These pounds were enough to exchange for 10 galleons, which could buy not just the snacks but twice as much again. Though this wasn't the gold standard era of Victorian times, the purchasing power of pounds was still impressive. These are magical snacks, Dudley, Harry said with a raised eyebrow. You don't think £50 is enough to buy these, do you? Dudley nodded earnestly, convinced by Harry's words. After all, moving chocolate frogs were a rarity. His remote-controlled car, which could move, had cost £49.99. A chocolate frog that could move and be eaten was clearly worth more. Dudley cheerfully handed over the £200 to Harry and said, Take it all. If it's not enough. No need. Just take them all, Harry said indifferently, pocketing the £250. Dudley cheered and thanked Harry, saying, Thanks, Harry, you're such a good person. Harry shrugged. See? He's even thanking me. I thought you'd hold a grudge against me for bullying you before and try to get revenge, Dudley said while stuffing the chocolate frogs into his pockets. Oh, right. I almost forgot about that, Harry said, grabbing a pillow. Noticing Harry's movement, Dudley instinctively gulped. What are you going to do? Harry's answer was a pillow attack right to Dudley's face. Chapter 11. The start of school. The pillow fight carried a playful element, so Dudley didn't call for help, simply letting Harry give him a good beating with the pillow. For some reason, after that night, Dudley became Harry's follower. In the month leading up to the start of school, Dudley treated Harry as if he were a completely different person. Only Harry knew the truth. Part of it was that Dudley was somewhat afraid of his magic, but the bigger reason was Harry's promise to bring him some magical snacks the next time he returned home. Seeing Dudley's chubby figure, Harry thought it might be necessary to give him some weight loss potions. The 750-pound Harry had obtained from the Dursleys was spent entirely on Muggle snacks, with a particular focus on Coca-Cola. Who knew how much he had longed for a sip of the fizzy drink during the Victorian era? Given the purchasing power of the pound, Harry took the night bus to Diagon Alley once again and bought a suitcase with an undetectable extension charm. He packed all the Muggle snacks into the suitcase and, seeing there was still space left, stuffed in his books and clothes as well. This suitcase cost him 30 galleons. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for, and Harry was very satisfied with the suitcase. A month flew by, and soon it was time for school to begin. Since Dudley was also starting at Smelting's Academy, the Dursleys drove to London to drop him off. I've always been curious. Where did you get wizard money? Uncle Vernon suddenly asked as they drove. It's the inheritance my parents left me, stored in Gringotts, Harry replied. The car screeched to a sudden halt, nearly causing Harry to hit the seat in front of him. Through the rearview mirror hanging in the car, Harry saw Uncle Vernon's face darken. Was he upset about not being paid for raising him? Harry wondered, then blurted out, I know I have money now. I can pay for all the years you've looked after me. You're just like your father, Potter. Uncle Vernon turned his fat body around in his seat, glaring at Harry. He was arrogant and conceited. My father wasn't conceited, and neither am I. If you don't mind, could you pull over? Harry interrupted, defending his father. Uncle Vernon snorted coldly and pulled the car to the side of the road. Turning to Harry again, he yelled, Listen, boy. I don't care how much pure gold you have stored in that blasted Gringotts. I love Petunia. I love her more than anything. If it weren't for her, do you think I'd have let a freak like you into my house? You know about Gringotts? Harry asked, raising an eyebrow, realizing Uncle Vernon had reacted so strongly because of its mention. Uncle Vernon's face turned purple again, his mustache trembling as he roared, Gringotts? Of course, I know Gringotts. When I met your father in a restaurant, Petunia told me he didn't have a job. I even considered offering him a position at my company, despite his lack of recognized qualifications. I even thought of funding him, but your father, Vernon. Oh my Vernon. Aunt Petunia, seated in the front passenger seat, clutched her collar as if she couldn't catch her breath. Like father, like son. The station is here. You can get out. Uncle Vernon fumed. Harry looked up and saw that they had indeed arrived at King's Cross Station. Sorry, Harry said with a smile to the Dursleys, then turned to Dudley. I'll be off now. Don't forget your promise, Dudley mouthed silently. Harry nodded, retrieved his suitcase from the trunk, extended its handle, and walked away. That was the grudge of the previous generation and had nothing to do with him. No need for mental gymnastics over it. 9 3/4, Harry muttered as he walked into the station, dragging his suitcase. Since it wasn't his first time entering the platform, Harry wasn't in a hurry. He leisurely strolled with his suitcase, calm and relaxed, waiting until the red-haired family in front of him entered before stepping onto platform 9 3/4 himself. The smoke from the steam engine swirled above the crowd. Cats of various colors darted around people's feet, accompanied by the cacophony of chatter and the occasional hoot of owls, creating a symphony of back-to-school excitement. It was very wizardly and had a distinct magical atmosphere. Since it was close to departure time, the first few compartments were already crowded with students. Some leaned out of the windows to chat with their families, others were playing games, and some quietly snacked on treats in their seats. Harry even spotted a chocolate frog leaping out of an open window, much to the dismay of its owner. In one of the rear compartments, Harry found an empty space. After storing his suitcase, he encountered a pair of identical red-haired twins. You're Harry Potter? The one on the left asked, his face lighting up with excitement. Before Harry could answer, a woman's voice called from outside. Fred, George, are you on the train? Coming, Mum. The twins hastily said goodbye to Harry and ran off. Harry leaned against the seat, gazing absent-mindedly at the crowd outside. He could still hear the twins' mother scolding them. That poor boy isn't a zoo animal for you to gawk at. Fred, George. As her voice faded, Harry lost interest in eavesdropping, settling into a comfortable position on the seat. Meanwhile, the twins' mother continued to reprimand them on the platform. I don't want you asking him about his scar. Don't make him think of that on his first day. All the wizards celebrated the day he got that scar and defeated you-know-who, but for him it was the day he lost his parents. Oh, the poor child. All right, don't get mad, said one of the twins. We get it. The whistle blew. All right, children, time to say goodbye, the woman said with a smile, kissing each child on the forehead. Get on the train, Ronnie dear. And you too. Don't make me receive another complaint from a professor about your pranks. The last remark was directed at the twins. Chapter 12, Ron. The train rumbled to life, beginning the journey to Hogwarts. Excuse me, is anyone sitting here? Harry looked toward the door, where a red-haired boy with freckles on his face stood nervously. No one, Harry replied. The boy thanked him, put his luggage away, and sat across from Harry. He looked nonchalant as he gazed out at the scenery, but he kept sneaking glances at Harry. Harry thought, this red hair must mean he's from that family. Hello, Harry greeted him first. I'm Harry Potter. Ronald Weasley, but you can call me Ron, the boy said, reaching out his hand in a manner that made him seem older than he was. Weasley? Harry's heart skipped a beat as he quickly asked, Weasley? You said your last name is Weasley? That's right, Ron replied, a little confused. Shouldn't I be the one asking the questions? He thought, asking about the famous savior and his incredible deeds. Why is the savior asking me instead? But Harry's mind was elsewhere, recalling Professor Matilda Weasley, the kind deputy headmistress and head of Gryffindor House who had taken good care of him back in school, as well as his good friend Gareth Weasley. The two fell into silence for a moment before Ron decided to break it. So, are you really? He hesitated, remembering his mother's advice, and swallowed back the question about Harry's scar. Really what? Harry asked. Did you really live with muggles? Ron asked awkwardly, changing the subject. I heard that somewhere. Is it true? Yes, Harry nodded. I live with my aunt and uncle. They're all muggles. What are they like? Ron asked. Not great. They're very against magic, Harry shrugged, then added wistfully. I wish I had 2 brothers, though. If you did, you'd know how annoying they are. Ron shuddered at the thought. And it's not 2, it's 5. I have 5 older brothers and a little sister. Wow, Harry said, genuinely impressed. A big, lively family like that had always been his dream. He had always wished for a few Potter siblings who would stand up for him when he was being bullied. But Ron didn't look too happy. I'm the 6th in my family to go to Hogwarts. At home, Mum always expects me to follow in their footsteps. My oldest brother, Bill, was head boy. My second brother, Charlie, was Quidditch captain. My third brother, Percy, just became a prefect, and Fred and George, even though they're always goofing around, are brilliant and everyone thinks they're so cool. So you feel a lot of pressure, Harry nodded understandingly, because your family expects you to live up to them. No, Ron said irritably. When you've got 5 older brothers, you never get anything new. I wear Bill's old robes, use Charlie's old wand, and I've even got Percy's hand-me-down rat. As he spoke, he pulled out a fat, sleeping rat from his pocket. Look, this is Scabbers, Ron said helplessly. He's really old and sleeps all the time. Percy got an owl as a reward for becoming a prefect, so he gave me this leftover rat. Ron realized he'd been talking too much, so he clammed up and looked out the window. He didn't want his new friend to think poorly of him because of all this. Look, Ron, Harry said, holding up his own clothes. These are my cousin Dudley's hand-me-downs. Look how baggy they are, like maternity clothes. Ever since I can remember, I've been wearing his old clothes. I've never had anything new. You see, Dudley's the same age as me, but he's huge and I'm small, so I fit into his cast-offs perfectly. There's nothing quite like shared experiences to bring people closer. Harry's words made Ron feel less unlucky. He could tell Harry wasn't just being polite. He really understood his situation. Sharing embarrassing stories helped the two bond quickly. As they talked, the train sped out of London. At the same time, there was a clattering noise in the corridor. A smiling woman with dimples slid the compartment door open and asked, "Anything from the trolley, dears?" It was lunchtime. The train had departed promptly at 11, and Harry, having angered Uncle Vernon earlier, hadn't had time to eat breakfast. He was starving. "No, I've got sandwiches, thanks," Ron said quietly, lowering his head. Harry stood up and stepped into the corridor. "I'll take some of everything, thanks." Even though he'd attended school for 6 years a century ago, he was still just 16 at heart. A kid. His resistance to snacks was there, but not very strong. The trolley lady handed him one of everything. When Harry paid, he gave her a galleon, 3 sickles, and 4 nuts. Carrying his haul of treats back to the compartment, Harry noticed Ron staring at the snacks with wide, unblinking eyes. Harry knew his new friend was tempted. "You're really hungry," Ron said definitively. "Yeah, starving," Harry replied, pulling out a pumpkin pasty and handing it to Ron. "No, mate," Ron said, pulling out a sandwich from a paper bag. "Mum packed me sandwiches for the train, though she always forgets I hate corned beef. Trade me for one." "Go on, take it," Harry offered the pasty. "You won't like it," Ron said, sniffing. "She's got 5 kids to take care of. She doesn't have time." "It's fine," Harry said with a smile. He finally convinced Ron to take the pasty. After one bite, Ron didn't touch his sandwich again. Harry tactfully didn't mention the sandwiches either, leaving his own untouched on the table. "Not bad," Harry said, biting into a cauldron cake. Then he pulled out a box of chocolate frogs. "You even got chocolate frogs?" Ron asked in surprise. "Yeah," Harry replied, opening the box. "I bought some in Diagon Alley before. They come with cards, though I'm not really interested in those. The frogs themselves are pretty good." "Do me a favor, mate," Ron said quickly. "If you get Agrippa or Ptolemy, save them for me. Yeah? No problem, Harry agreed, flipping through the card. Oh, it's Dumbledore, he said softly. Chapter 13. Grindelwald. Dumbledore? Harry repeated. Ron, thinking Harry didn't know who Dumbledore was, said, Don't tell me you don't know Dumbledore, mate. He's only the greatest wizard in the world. Is that so? Harry replied absent-mindedly. Check the back of the card, Ron suggested, pulling it from Harry's hand. I'll read it to you. Albus Dumbledore, current headmaster of Hogwarts, is widely recognized as the greatest wizard of our time, Ron began. Dumbledore is known for his numerous achievements, including defeating the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, discovering the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his collaboration with Nicholas Flamel in alchemy. Harry interrupted suddenly at the mention of a familiar name. Who? Nicholas Flamel, Ron said, raising an eyebrow. His partner. You know him? No, I meant the one before that. Who did he defeat? Harry clarified. The dark wizard, Grindelwald, Ron replied. That name sent Harry's thoughts spiraling back a century to his 5th year. Hey, mate. Gareth, Harry's dorm mate, nudged him with his elbow. Did you hear? We're getting a new student this year. Really? Harry asked indifferently, picking up his water goblet. Yeah, heard it from my aunt. She's the deputy headmistress, so she always knows before us. But the feast has started, and they're still not here. As Gareth finished speaking, the great hall doors swung open dramatically. Harry turned to see a disheveled Professor Figo accompanied by a stunning girl who looked almost ethereal. Her golden hair shimmered even more brightly than Malfoy's, Harry thought. Sensing his gaze, the girl looked at Harry and smiled sweetly. That smile felt like moonlight pouring over his heart, catching him completely off guard. He choked on his drink and clumsily wiped his mouth with his robe, managing only to return an awkward grin. Snap out of it, mate, Gareth teased, elbowing Harry again. You're practically glued to her. Look at Malfoy's face. She's probably planning to mock you later. Harry snapped out of it, glancing at the Slytherin table. Cassandra Malfoy was glaring at him with utter disdain. When the Sorting Hat called out, Slytherin! The hall erupted in applause. Before Harry knew it, the girl was standing beside him, to Gareth's evident envy. Hello, may I sit here? She asked. Of course. Please do, Harry stammered, hurriedly pushing Gareth aside to make room. Ignoring his friend's wounded look, the girl took the seat next to Harry. And that was how Harry met Veritia, who would become one of his closest friends. Harry shook himself out of the memory. No matter what Ron said, he couldn't believe Veritia had become a dark wizard. How could she be a dark wizard? Harry muttered. Ron, chewing a candy, glanced at him. She? Oh no, mate, Grindelwald was a bloke. His name's... Oh yeah, Gellert Grindelwald. Heard his relationship with Dumbledore was pretty complicated. Oh. Harry sighed with relief. He then recalled Gellert. He'd met Gellert during a Christmas visit to Voracious family in Austria-Hungary. Back then, Gellert had been an 8-year-old boy with a temper as fiery as his sunflower yellow hair. That kid? A dark wizard? Dark wizard or not, Harry couldn't help but remember how pinchable Gellert's cheeks had been. Mate, you really need to catch up on wizarding history, Ron sighed. You're the chosen one. You can't keep being this clueless. You're right, Harry agreed earnestly. At that moment, the compartment door slid open again. A pudgy boy with tear-filled eyes asked timidly, Sorry to bother you, but have you seen my toad? Both Harry and Ron shook their heads. The boy burst into tears. It keeps running away from me. I've lost it again. Take it easy, Ron offered. Maybe it'll turn up soon. The boy didn't respond and bolted out of the compartment, still crying. If I had a toad, I'd have chucked it ages ago, Ron muttered. I just don't see the appeal. Thank Merlin I've got Scabbers. Sure, he's old and lazy, sleeps like the dead, but he's been with me for years. Honestly, I kind of like him. Don't judge. Harry was taken aback by Ron's peculiar fondness for his rat but decided not to judge. Everyone had their quirks. However, he was firm about one thing: Hedwig was never allowed on his bed. Yesterday, Fred and George taught me a spell to turn scabbers yellow. Wanna see? Ron said, pulling out an old, battered wand. Look, even the unicorn hair's poking out. But it'll work. Charlie's wand, right? Harry asked. Yeah, Charlie's old wand, Ron replied reluctantly. Harry recalled Ollivander's words. The wand chooses the wizard. He wondered how well Charlie's wand would work for Ron. Before he could voice his concern, the door opened yet again. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville lost one. Harry recognized the voice instantly and looked up excitedly. Hermione. Oh, Harry. Hermione beamed. I was just looking for you. But then I saw Neville crying and thought I'd help. Are you practicing magic? I tried some spells at home, didn't go well, though. Can I see what you're doing? Her rapid-fire speech left Ron gaping. He had never met anyone who talked so fast. Hermione, unfazed, plopped down beside Harry, who handed her a bag of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. Clearing his throat, Ron waved his wand theatrically. All right, watch this. Daisies, cream, sunshine. Turn this rat yellow. Nothing happened. Are you sure that's a spell? Hermione asked skeptically. Ron sheepishly lowered his wand, realizing Fred and George had pranked him again. Hermione turned to Harry. What about you, Harry? Can you? You said that boy's name was Neville? Harry interrupted. Yes, Neville, Hermione replied. Harry drew his wand and pointed it at the door. Neville's toad. Come here. Hermione sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. She couldn't believe she was stuck with two boys who were equally clueless about magic. Do you really think that's going to work? She asked incredulously. Chapter 14. How did Slytherin become like this? Wait, Harry said, not rebutting Hermione. As soon as he spoke, a toad flew in through the door, landing accurately in front of him. Look, is this the toad you're looking for? Harry asked. Hermione widened her eyes in disbelief, staring at Harry. The summoning charm was supposed to be a fourth-year spell, something she had only noticed while casually reading yesterday. That's incredible! Ron sat upright in amazement, exclaiming, Mate, you truly deserve the title of the boy who lived. The hesitation Hermione had just felt vanished in an instant. Of course, he was the savior of the wizarding world, after all. I'll go return the toad to Neville. He's probably worried sick, Hermione said, picking up the toad. Thanks, Harry. I'll come back after dropping it off. I have so many spells I want to ask you about. Without waiting for Harry's response, Hermione left the compartment with the toad. She's terrifying, isn't she? Ron muttered with lingering fear as he watched the door. For some reason, every time he saw Hermione, he felt like he couldn't look her in the eye. Harry shrugged. Back when he was pestering Sebastian to learn dueling, he was far more persistent than Hermione. No matter which house I'm sorted into, I hope it's not the same one as hers, Ron continued. Merlin. She reminds me of Percy, except she's even more. He tossed his wand into his trunk, muttering, That spell's useless, just another one of George's pranks. Be careful around those two when you get to school. Don't trust anything they say, and definitely don't eat anything they give you. I mean it. You'll regret it. Harry nodded knowingly. If they could even prank their innocent little brother, those twins probably had a special talent for mischief. Which house are they in? Harry asked, already guessing it might be Gryffindor. Sure enough, Ron replied. Gryffindor. Mum and Dad were both in that house, and all 5 of my brothers too. If I don't get into Gryffindor, I can only imagine what they'd say about me. I mean, Ravenclaw wouldn't be bad. But please, just not Slytherin. Why not? Harry asked curiously. Because Slytherin's full of dark wizards, Ron said matter-of-factly. Harry raised an eyebrow. While it was true that Slytherin students didn't shy away from studying dark magic, the statement seemed a bit harsh. Could the inter-house rivalries have deepened this much over the past century? Why do you think that? Harry asked, wondering if something had changed over the years. Because you know who was from Slytherin, Ron mumbled. And after him, almost all the Slytherins became his followers. You know what kind of person he was. Anyone who followed him couldn't be good. Just a bunch of dark wizards who don't care about life. Harry sighed. Damn it, Slytherin, how did it come to this? Oh, I'm back. Hermione's voice rang out from the doorway. I couldn't find Neville after looking everywhere, so I just left the toad on his desk. What were you talking about? Houses. Ron forced a smile. Noticing Ron's unease, Hermione asked with concern. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm just wondering what'll happen if I don't get into Gryffindor, Ron said, resting his chin on his hands. Fred and George told me that first years have to pass an entrance test to be sorted. Their year had to face a troll in groups of 10. But didn't you say, Harry caught the contradiction, not to believe a word they say? That's true, but I asked Dad, and he said the same thing, Ron said, his face growing more distressed. But he said their test wasn't as bad. Only 5 of them had to deal with a giant spider. One unlucky kid got bitten and spent a month in the hospital wing. At that moment, a haughty voice came from the doorway. So it's true? Harry Potter is on this train. The 3 of them looked toward the door. Standing there was a slender boy with pale blonde hair slicked back, trying to appear more mature. His gray eyes were cold and proud. Blonde hair and a pompous air. Harry recognized him immediately. Another Malfoy. 2 boys stood behind him, one tall and burly, the other short and pudgy. Clearly henchmen. This is Crabbe and this is Goyle. The Malfoy introduced his companions. I'm Draco. Draco Malfoy. Ron stifled a cough to keep from laughing. You think my name is funny, do you? Draco sneered at Ron. I don't need to ask who you are. Red hair, shabby clothes, you must be a Weasley. My father says the Weasleys have more children than they can afford. Turning to Harry, he added, You'll find some wizarding families are much better than others. You wouldn't want to make friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He extended his hand toward Harry. Harry, who thought of himself as patient, found his temper flaring at Draco's arrogant demeanor. This Malfoy reminded him of Cassandra, but at least Cassandra had manners. She would never insult someone's family or launch into personal attacks. This Malfoy had no such restraint. I think you owe him an apology, Harry said coldly. Kids from decent families don't insult other people's homes. I think Harry's right, Hermione said firmly, stepping up beside Harry and Ron. Ron's eyes reddened. He hadn't expected these 2 new acquaintances to stand up for him like this. And who are you? Draco asked, frowning at Hermione. Hermione Granger, she replied proudly. Draco's sneer deepened. A filthy little mudblood. You stink. Shut up. Ron leapt to his feet, pointing his wand at Draco. How dare you say that word? Draco looked back at his companions with a smug grin. Oh, defending your little girlfriend, Weasley? Are you sure you're ready to deal with the consequences of cursing me? My father's on the school board. He could get your father fired in a heartbeat. What would your family do then? Huh. The response came swiftly. Leviosa. A yellow light hit Draco, lifting him into the air. His head bumped against the doorframe. The caster wasn't Ron or Hermione. Chapter 15. Educate you on behalf of your ancestors. Well done, Harry, Ron exclaimed enthusiastically. Draco, still floating midair, came to his senses and yelled in anger. Put me down, Potter! Harry didn't budge, prompting Draco to turn toward his henchman. Crabbe, Goyle, what are you waiting for? Help me! The 2 hulking boys snapped out of their stupor and began lumbering forward, ready to rescue their leader. Without hesitation, Ron leapt forward, trying to intercept them despite the obvious size difference. Unfortunately, Goyle shoved him back effortlessly, causing Ron to stumble and land on the seat. What a fool! Hermione muttered with exasperation. She pulled out her wand and aimed it at Crabbe and Goyle. Petrificus totalis. Caught off guard, both boys were hit by the full bodybind curse. They toppled to the floor with 2 loud thuds. Brilliant! Ron exclaimed in admiration, clearly impressed that the Muggle-born which had saved the day with a single spell. Full body-bind curse. The Standard Book of Spells, Chapter 6. Hermione recited mechanically, still holding her wand at the ready. Her posture betrayed her internal struggle. She knew the severity of her actions, casting spells on fellow students, especially the son of a Hogwarts governor, before even arriving at school. She had read the rules thoroughly and knew the potential consequences. They might expel me, she thought sadly, but she did not regret stepping in. While she didn't fully understand the slur Draco had used, she knew enough to recognize its intent to insult and degrade. Ron had stood up for her. It was only right to return the favor. "You filthy little mudblood! How dare you?" Draco snarled, still suspended in the air. "I'll tell my father. You'll all be expelled. And besides your father, what else do you rely on?" Harry asked dryly, walking closer. "You're a pureblood wizard, yet you've just been outmatched by a couple of Muggle-borns. Quite embarrassing, don't you think?" He flicked his wand, causing Draco to drop unceremoniously to the floor. Standing over him, Harry locked eyes with the boy's frightened gray gaze. For a fleeting moment, Harry was reminded of another pair of proud, defiant gray eyes, Cassandra's. He thought back to his own humiliating defeat at her hands during his first duel at the Wand Combat Club. "Is this your idea of effort?" Cassandra had once sneered at him. Pathetic. Without realizing it, Harry let the words slip from his lips. "Is this what you call superior? Pathetic." The remark was satisfying. While he bore no grudge against Cassandra, giving Draco Malfoy a taste of his own medicine felt like poetic justice. Infuriated, Draco scrambled to his feet and pulled out his wand, but Harry was faster. Expelliarmus! Draco's wand flew from his grasp, arcing through the air before landing neatly in Harry's hand. "Relax, Malfoy," Harry said, tucking the wand into Draco's trembling hands. "I'm just teaching you a lesson. For your ancestors' sake." "Cool," Ron said with a wide grin. Draco, however, wasn't nearly as amused. Anger and humiliation bubbled over as tears welled in his eyes. I'll tell my father," he sniffled. Feeling bored with the exchange, Harry stepped back and gestured for Draco to leave. "All right, Dramaco, stop your solo performance," Harry said mockingly. "Your dad isn't here to save you, so take your cronies and get out of my compartment." Sniffling and stumbling, Draco gathered Crabbe and Goyle and stormed out of the compartment. He turned back once to yell, "You'll regret this. All three of you will be expelled." As the door slammed shut, Hermione's face fell. "Now we're really in trouble," she fretted, running a hand through her frizzy hair. "We're definitely getting expelled." "Then why'd you fight him?" Ron asked. "If someone else had learned more than 2 spells, I wouldn't have had to step in," Hermione snapped back. Ron flushed and looked away, unable to argue with the truth. "Don't worry," Harry reassured her. "We won't get expelled for something so minor. Besides, Malfoy started it. That word he used is seriously offensive." "I still don't know what it means," Hermione admitted, "but it was clear enough that it was disgusting, just like the person who said it." "It's one of the worst insults," Ron explained grimly. "Mudblood is what some purebloods call Muggleborns. It means dirty or inferior blood, like you're worth no more than mud." Hermione bit her lip and nodded. "Well, thank you, Ron, for sticking up for me." You're welcome," Ron stammered, waving his hand awkwardly. "By the way," Hermione said, pointing to Ron's face, "you've got a smudge right here." Ron wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Oh, that must have been what Fred was talking about earlier. I thought he was joking." Harry and Hermione exchanged amused looks. Soon, the train whistle blew, and a voice echoed through the carriage. "5 minutes until we arrive at Hogwarts. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school for you." As they changed into their robes, Harry noticed Ron's were slightly too short, exposing his worn-out sneakers. The sight reminded Harry of his own hand-me-down clothes from the Dursleys. "Come on, mate, let's get going," Ron said, grinning. After fighting together, their bond had deepened. And in Harry's mind, their trio already included Hermione, too.